Hello and welcome to Talk to Downtown. My name is Courtney Wood. I'm the Economic Development Director for the Downtown Stockton Alliance, the 501c6 nonprofit property-based business improvement district serving downtown Stockton. This series is intended to connect our business owners, property owners, visitors, and residents with the organizations, people, and resources which impact our community. Today we have special guest, Fire Chief Bryan Carr. I'm very excited to chat with him today. We'll begin by having him share a little bit about his background and how it led him to becoming the fire chief for the city of Stockton. Then I will go through a list of questions I've outlined for him. And at the end, we will open it up for viewer questions. So if you do have a question, please type it in as a comment and we will get to it towards the end of the live. And with that, welcome. Thank you so much for being here, Fire Chief Carr. I'm excited to chat with you. Please tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and how you came to be the fire chief for the city of Stockton.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. As I gave you the caveat, I will give others the caveat. This is my first podcast, so I'm learning on the fly here, but I hope it's informative and beneficial for your listeners. So I was hired with the Stockton Fire Department almost 20 years exactly. I was hired in 2005, in September of 2005. I got hired here with Stockton when I was 33. So I was a little bit older. I had a previous career. I'd actually graduated college, and I always knew I wanted to be in public service. Always felt like just wanting to be a part of the community, giving back. But out of college, I had a real focus on the law and had a professor that encouraged me to actually go to law school. So I ended up going to law school. Graduating with a law degree and practicing law for a few years as a criminal prosecutor in San Jose. And while I was over there, I got about 3 years into it and realized I probably wasn't going to be satisfied for my whole career just in that office environment. I loved the criminal law, super interesting. So long story short, my sister was a paramedic and she was living in Chico. And so her and I started talking, and she asked me if I'd ever considered the fire service. And I said, no, I hadn't been anything, but she knew I liked public service. I really liked helping the community. So long story short, I started doing some ride-alongs. We had some family friends that were at some different fire departments throughout Northern California. And I started to really become interested in the departments and the fire service in general, and decided to pursue my EMT certificate, which I did, and continued to do some ride-alongs and felt like it would just be a great fit for me. It was super difficult, obviously, to leave the legal field, but my wife was very supportive, knew that, wanted me to pursue my passion. So with that being said, I started testing and got hired here in 2005. And Mike, I've had a great career, worked my way up through the ranks, firefighter, captain, battalion chief. I was a division chief in charge of EMS and dispatch here. And then took a position with Livermore Pleasanton Fire Department as the deputy fire chief about a year ago. It gave me a great experience, and then came back here about 6 months after I got hired with Livermore Pleasanton, came back here to take over a deputy chief spot and then ultimately the fire chief spot. Kind of answering your question about, I kind of feel like I just fell into the fire chief role, to be honest with you. I never started my career with any desire to be the fire chief. Every position that I took on to just do a good job and be the best I could be in that position. I think I'm a pretty collaborative, inclusive person. So I think people liked working for me in my different roles, and usually was able to do a pretty good job. So that kind of just led me to continuing to advance in the organization. But I never, even today, there's times when I put on my uniform and I kind of am pinching myself that I'm the fire chief. It's just not something that I anticipated or planned on doing. But just thankful that I'm here and I can help in whatever way I can. So, yeah.
Thank you. So you really grew into this role because you have extensive experience, in fire service and you just naturally came to be fire chief. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you share a little bit about the history of the city of Stockton's fire department particularly?
Yeah, so there's a very long history with the Stockton Fire Department, going back as early as like 1849. There was a large fire that had come through the business district, and they realized they needed some fire protection services. So in 1850, they actually started one of the first volunteer brigades, which was referred to as Weber Engine Company Number One, and obviously under the town founder Charles Weber. So we go back all the way to 1850, and from about 1850 to 1888, there were different volunteer brigades that were located throughout the downtown district areas. And then in 1888, the department officially became a career paid fire department. So when you think about 1888, I mean that's a very old fire department, and it's one of the things that we're very proud of is our history and the tradition that we have in the city of Stockton. And so then we advanced into the 1900s. The city began to grow and grow. Obviously, we went from the horse-drawn to the internal combustion engines. I think we had our first one here in Stockton in 1912. And then, like I said, we continued to grow as a city. And then in the 70s, we actually started contracting with two of our fire districts that we still contract for today. So there's East Side Fire District and the Lincoln District. And they, in 1976, I think it was roughly, they entered into a contract with the fire department for us to provide service to those areas. And so then in 1984, we also entered a contract to provide for Country Club Tuxedo Fire District area. So now total, we've probably got 350,000 people. So it's a little higher than the city. When you see the city population, we're a little more than the city population as far as the people that we protect. And it's roughly probably 90 square miles. So yeah, in recent history, obviously, as people know, with the city filing bankruptcy and emerging from that process in 2011, it really did affect our fire department. And I can go into details on that if and when if you want to. But that's kind of an overview of our history. We've been around a long, long time. Our members, retired and current members, take great pride in that history. And so we continue to try to honor those that came before us and really started the foundation of what is today the Stockton Fire Department.
Thank you. Yeah, interesting to learn that originally it was volunteer based and then finally, turned into created paid positions. So now that it is, this is a paid fire service, has been for a long time. Can you share what the official mission is of the Stockton Fire Department and what services you provide?
Yeah, so our official mission, we have a mission statement that's listed on our website, which is to, it was created, I know it was revised about 5 years ago, basically to provide excellent customer service. And our customer service, as our mission statement says, comes in public education, fire prevention, and then what we call our main core mission, which is fire suppression, EMS, which is our emergency medical services, and then rescue activities. So that's our mission, is to provide as excellent customer service as we can, ensuring the community is safe. And we do that through public education, fire prevention, and then our fire suppression and EMS activities that we perform on a daily basis. and people sometimes aren't aware that we go and do as much medical services as we do. So here in Stockton, I would say we probably have about 60% of our calls that are emergency medical in nature, and then the other the other 40% would be like I would call other, which would be fires, lift assist, public service, just other calls that we get out in the community that aren't medical related.
Wow, very interesting. And you serve such a large area. You were saying 90 square miles, so that's a huge area.
Yeah.
How many fire calls has the department been on this year so far? And have you noticed a change between this year and last year?
So generally speaking, I don't have the most current number as of to date. Generally speaking, to break it down, we typically run for about 45,000 incidents. So for a city our size, that's absolutely an incredible number of calls. And on average, I want to say when I came on again 20 years ago, we might have been annually running about 30,000 calls. So as you can see, we've had like a 50% increase just in 20 years. But actually, to go to my point about bankruptcy is, although we've increased 50% in our call volume, my staffing levels are lower than they were when I was hired. So I have less people on duty every day now than I did when I got hired 20 years ago. So we used to have, back in 2011, just prior to bankruptcy, we'd have about 75 firefighters on duty every day. And that number now, just so I don't misquote it, we're now down to, I want to make sure I wasn't misquoting, but we're down now to about 61 firefighters on duty per day. So again, we've seen about a 30% reduction in the number of daily staffing that I have, but yet my call volume has increased and most likely will continue to increase just because of the nature of what we do as far as emergency medical calls.
Wow, what a challenge. And how does the size of our department compare to similar departments in other cities?
Yeah, so it's really hard. So I like to try to compare things. I'm a pretty big data person, and I don't like just throwing numbers out because I feel like it doesn't give context to people. So I try to like compare numbers so people have an idea, and it's kind of hard, but I'll try to do it in a couple different ways. If you consider one of the best ways to do it might be population size. So for example, if I was to say the city of Stockton and the areas that we cover is about 350,000 people. If you were to go to the city of Oakland, it might be about 450,000 people. Now again, you can't compare everything as apples to apples because Oakland has a little more urban density. They have some high rises buildings that we don't have. But generally speaking, what I have in Stockton is I have 13 fire stations. If you were to go to Oakland, they might have 25 to 30 fire stations. So you can see where their population isn't that much greater than us, but the density and the fire station locations and stuff that they have is much more. They have a greater volume of fire stations. Another way to consider it is looking at our call volume. So again, saying this year we're on pace to run about 45,000 calls a year, maybe a little more than that. And so when I say that, if you were to ask anybody across the country what they consider a busy fire engine to be, how busy, how many calls would a busy fire engine run in a year? They would say, oh, a fire engine that runs 3,000 calls a year is busy. Well, I have 13 fire engines, and I can tell you that probably 9 of them run over 3,000 calls a year. So again, trying to just put it in perspective, you know, we say that we're busy, but trying to let the community kind of gauge a context of just how busy we are. I have a couple fire engines that will run close to 7,000 calls this year,
Wow.
and so we used to. There was a reporting system every year. A fire department would report their busiest fire engine to one of our national organizations, and our engine 9 across from St. Joseph's Hospital was always or usually one of the top 10 in the country as far as
Wow.
number of runs they would go on. So that's kind of a way to try to explain in simple terms that we are very busy. We run a lot of calls, and we take pride, obviously, in trying to do the best job we can with the personnel that we have. So
definitely. Wow, so you guys are extremely busy, always on the go.
Yes.
Given the constraints that you've talked about, what would you say is your department's average response time to a 911 fire call?
So it varies. So I will tell you what our goal is. There's a national standard. The goal, there's kind of two components to response time. One is called what we call turnout time. That's the time from when the call comes to the fire station to the time that we get dressed and start rolling the wheels out of the fire station. For an EMS call, we want that turnout time to be within 60 seconds.
Wow, that's amazing.
That's within our control as a fire department, and we're very good on our turnout times.
Awesome.
When it's a fire, the standard goes up a little higher because we have to get all our turnouts on and we have to get more gear on. That standard goes to 80 seconds. And again, I can say we're very, very good at that, meeting that standard and getting out of the firehouse. There's a second standard, which is the travel time. So in your total response time, you have the turnout time and then you have response time or travel time, excuse me. The travel time, the standard is 4 minutes. So they want us to be able to get to a call when we start rolling out of the firehouse. They want us to be able to get there in 4 minutes. Part of what I mentioned to you about 13 firehouses covering 350,000 people, 90 square miles, we push the envelope on that 4 minute response time or 4 minute travel time. So again, depending on where the call is, how close it is to the station, the time of day, what the traffic patterns are like, we're very close on that 4 minute standard. We can always get better. And so what we're trying to balance is we obviously want our crews to be safe, travel safely, but we know that seconds count. We want to get to the call as quickly as we can. So we have some exciting stuff coming up. We applied for a grant this fall, which we're hoping the city will be awarded, and we think it's going to help us with some of what we call our traffic preemption devices. So we could actually, with new technology, our fire engine could have a route already pre-planned on how to get to the call, and then our stoplights could already be pre-programmed to help give us the green, to get to the call. So with technology and with some grant funding, we're hoping that there's some things we can do to help with that travel time. But like I said, we do a pretty good job. We do a really good job on our turnout times, getting dressed and getting out of the fire station. And then some of it's out of our control just because of time of day, traffic patterns, what else is going on in the city.
That grant sounds really interesting. I hope you guys do receive it. And how wonderful to be able to control all the lights so that you can get there just that much faster. Just the seconds make a difference.
Absolutely. I'm a huge fan of technology, and I will be the first to tell you that I'm quasi ignorant on it as well. It's changing so fast. I mean, as people know with AI, things are changing so fast. And even in the fire service, there's so many things that are now at our fingertips and available to us. But of course, it comes down to funding personnel and manpower? Do we have enough people to implement, the technology to stay up on it? So I can say as one of my missions as the fire chief is to definitely pursue as many of these opportunities we can to utilize technology to, whether it's get to calls faster, make it safer for our crews, make it safer for the community. I'm all in 110%. It's just a matter of learning what's out there and then having the funding to implement it. So
beautiful. And yeah, 4 minutes is a really good time frame. It's wonderful to hear and amazing to hear how quickly you can get to these calls. That's good to know. Feeling very safe.
Yeah.
What's something that you think people would be surprised to know about the Stockton Fire Department?
I was thinking about this, and I think one thing that people might not know, and I think they're surprised to hear, is so I found this out early in my career, is when I was a firefighter, and I would talk to people that didn't work for the department, but I've lived since I got hired. I've lived off and on here in Stockton and been part of the Stockton community, and I would talk to people, and they would say, "Well, what do you do when the paramedics get on scene?" And I was like, "Well, what do you mean when the paramedics get on scene?" I'm like, "I'm a paramedic." And so I think a lot of people didn't realize that the fire department, we have paramedics on every fire engine and every fire truck in the city. And because our fire stations are pretty strategically located, we get to a lot of the medical calls before the local ambulance company gets there. And because we have paramedics, we're able to start that, if it's required, be able to start that life-saving treatment, whether it's starting IVs, giving medications, doing defibrillations with the heart monitor. So I think a lot of people were surprised, over the years to learn that we had paramedics on our fire engines, because they just thought that they were only on the ambulance and that the fire had nothing to do with paramedics. And in fact, we in Stockton, again, this is part of our proud tradition and history. We've been providing paramedic services since 1975 here in the city on at least one fire engine. And then we've expanded that to now, every day, every shift, I have at least one paramedic riding on every fire engine and fire truck. So.
Wow, that is really interesting and wonderful to know. And it makes a lot of sense, since you were talking about how quickly you're able to, turn people out, that you would be the first responder. They're providing the life-saving support. So very interesting to know that.
Yeah.
What is the most common question that you were asked, and how do you answer it?
So this has changed. This question changed with my role, right? So when I was when I was a firefighter out on the streets running calls, everybody wanted to know, what's the worst call you've been on? What's the worst call you've seen? Yeah. And honestly, I would just tell the community that, as a firefighter, I don't know that that's the best question to answer or to ask. And I don't think people aren't doing it out of a bad intent. But it was always very difficult for me because I never wanted to share details about some of the calls that I went on, that some of them, to be quite honest, have stuck with me for my entire career, and I'll never forget that. And it's not because they were necessarily good calls, it's because they were such bad calls. And so I always tried to flip that question and find a way where I could spin it to say, kind of give an education component. And what I would say was, well, I would say vehicle accidents, because we go on so many vehicle accidents, and usually they're on the freeway, and usually they involve high speeds, and usually the outcomes aren't very good. So I would never give anyone details of a specific call, but I will always just say probably the vehicle accidents and how much damage and how much harm is caused by people driving poorly on the freeways and high speeds. And so I'd kind of always try to spin it and make it like a educational component to it. Um, but yeah, there are, not to get into the the emotional side of firefighting, but there is a pretty heavy emotional side. We see a lot of things that take a toll on us individually, and people deal with that differently depending on who they are. And so I guess I would just tell the community, you don't mean anything by your question, but be careful, understanding that people see, firefighters see things on a daily basis that I wouldn't ever really want. There's things I've never told my wife or I've never told my children about things that I've seen. Whether that's right or wrong, that's a personal choice. And so I always was cautious about how I answered that question and just tried to spin it to, hey, this is, vehicle accidents, for example. Those are some of the worst calls that I've been on, and they're pretty bad because of speeds and how people are using, driving on the freeways. So, and then as fire chief, usually it's pretty much these last couple of months, it's just been, how's it going? And my response is, it's busy. It's busier than I thought it would be. And it's a 7-day-a-week job, which I love because I'm a workaholic and I love working and I love helping and doing things to help. So I'm really enjoying it. Yeah.
Very thorough answer, and thank you for kind of clarifying how it's changed with the different roles that you've had. And since you touched on this, I think I'll go in this direction. What would you say is the most difficult aspect of your job?
As the fire chief?
Yes.
Man, I would say probably the different variety of things that I need to handle. So it could be everything from operational issues to administrative, finance, funding issues, succession planning, looking to the future, for development for future fire stations and having the personnel as we continue to grow as a community. I think having so many things in the air and wanting to tackle so many things, what I've had to do is realize, okay, what's the priority right now? What do I focus on? And just, take things one at a time. I have an incredible staff. I have incredible deputy chiefs, and I have 3 deputy chiefs and then 2 division chiefs underneath them. I have great support services personnel from finance, budget, HR. So they help immensely, and one of the challenges for me is learning to delegate and be understanding what I need to delegate and what I need to hold on to. And I remember somebody telling me they thought that was one of the biggest challenges when they took over as a fire chief, is what do they need to delegate and what do they need to hold on to? And only a few months into this, I feel like I'm still learning that, but I've gotten better. And my team, like I said, I have a phenomenal team where there's not much that I don't feel like I can delegate. And in addition to that, I try to be very inclusive so that all of my team knows what, even if I'm handling it, they know what I'm doing and they know what's going on, so that if something was to happen, and they needed to step in, if I'm gone for a day or whatever, they can step in and not miss a beat. And that's what I think the community deserves. That's what my boss deserves. That's what the elected officials deserve. So again, trying to keep my people prepared, understanding our mission and aware of what stuff that I'm handling, but then also knowing when to delegate and to allow have them take things and run with it as well. So that's probably been the biggest challenges.
I 100% understand. Yeah, it can be hard to decide, what should I do? What should I hand off to someone else? It's very challenging.
Yeah.
What would you say is the most rewarding aspect of your work?
Well, this is going to sound very cliche, but I mean, helping people. I love helping people. At the end of the day, I think that's why most, if not all, firefighters initially get involved in firefighting is they know they're going to help somebody. Like I knew almost every day, it could be literally going just to put a smoke detector in somebody's house. It could be going just to a school to do a presentation on fire safety to our students. It could be going on a cardiac arrest, person not breathing call. I knew I was going to help somebody. I was going to do something good, and that was super rewarding for me. And now as the fire chief, I look at it the same way. I'm just helping in a different way. I'm not putting my hands on patients, but I'm helping the community by looking at, ways that we can be prepared as a fire department. How do we make sure we can meet the demand of the community? How do we make sure we can meet the future needs of the community? And then helping my own employees, helping my members, my people in the department, being a good chief, being a good fire chief, and helping them every day enjoy their job and what they're doing, and helping them carry out the mission of the fire department. To me, it's all about helping, and that's what I love doing. So,
a real dedication to service, servicing our community. I love it.
That's what drives most of us, if not all of us, is serving the community. And like I said, it sounds cliche, but I don't know any other way to basically sugarcoat it. But that's what we love doing. So
it's beautiful. As chief, what are some of your top priorities and goals right now?
Well, I have a lot, and like I said, I've wanted to try to figure out prioritizing. What do we need to do immediately? What can happen in the midterm, and then what can we take on in the long term? One really exciting project that we have right now, and I want to make sure the community knows about this, is we have partnered. The Stockton Fire Department has partnered with Lodi Fire Department and Tracy Fire Department, and we created a joint powers of authority with our three departments to come together and to submit a bid to help manage and oversee the ambulance transport for all of San Joaquin County. So we came forward, we created the JPA, and then we looked for an ambulance company that wanted to partner with the three fire departments to provide a service. And every 5 years, the county has a contract renewal that comes up for that county contract to be the ambulance transport provider. And we put a bid in just a couple months ago with our subcontractor, AMR, who's currently doing it in the county. And they put a bid in to bid with us as our subcontractor. And we were awarded the bid to provide ambulance transport. So we have a name. Our organization, the JPA, has been called CenCal, kind of for Central California, but it's the three departments in AMR, and the three departments will be overseeing the entire operation, and AMR will be working for the fire departments. And our goal is to provide the highest level of service, the right service at the right time to the right patient. So we'll have, our goals are to increase the number of ambulances that are on the street. Our goals are to work on getting, to having less wait times at the hospitals, which will be a partnership with our hospitals, and to provide just a higher level of service in the ambulance transport business. And so that's super exciting, and that's really like a huge focus of mine right now. And there's a lot of components that go with it. That by next June, the contract expires, and we would take over as the oversight body, with AMR still being the transport agency. The only difference the community would see, well, hopefully they'll see more ambulances on the street. The ambulances may look a little different. They might be branded like with the CenCal, like a CenCal logo, but they'll be AMR employees that will be responding to the calls with, again, the fire departments as well. And then the three fire chiefs will kind of be overseeing the entire operation. So that's a very exciting, big big item on my plate that I'm hoping to help push forward as well. Some
That
of my
sounds,
other, yeah, some of my other priorities are recruitment and retention for my department. As I told you, we have paramedics. There's a national shortage of paramedics in the country and in the state of California. So always looking at ways to recruit or train paramedics, and to be able to provide that higher level of service, um, is a huge mission of mine. The recruitment side of it is getting into our community and letting our young people know about what a great career it is to be in the fire service. So we're partnering with Stockton Unified School District, and they are starting a career technical education program in fire science next year. And they're looking at a location at one of the Stockton Unified High Schools, and we're looking to partner with them to help, push that out and help our young folks in high school know about a career in the fire service and careers in the healthcare industry in general. So that's another big, initiative of mine that I'm looking forward to. Um, as I mentioned, I'm always looking for ways to help improve our service delivery model to our community, and then we're always looking at personally, and my staff. We're always, priority is always our own employees' mental health and well-being. So we're looking. We have a mental health program and wellness program, and we're continuing to kind of bolster that program to provide those services for our own employees who, like I said, the emotional and kind of the mental trauma and some of the things that we go through on a daily basis. Those are things that people need to deal with and work with through on a daily basis. And I don't want people trying to figure it out 20 years into their career. So we want them to be healthy and productive. So that's a big, initiative of mine as well. So those are kind of a few of the big areas that I'm focused on right now.
those are big projects. It sounds like putting out the bid sounds like that will improve coordination of services. It probably will make it a lot easier, communicating with ambulances and things like that.
Absolutely, you're 110%, correct. We'll have a better communication with the ambulance. We'll have better situational awareness. Where our ambulances are at, where they're coming from. The whole system will be more fully integrated with fire and ambulance, potentially even on the same dispatch channels someday. But yeah, way better situational awareness, and having the fire chiefs and the fire departments overall having control of the level of service and making sure that we have enough ambulances out there on the streets responding, to the community. So
Beautiful. And then you mentioned about, hiring. So if someone listening is curious about working with the Stockton Fire Department, how can they learn more?
yeah, so, there's a couple different ways. First and foremost, I will, at the end of the podcast, I'll have my email and my phone number. I actually work with some young people right now. I try to mentor anybody that's interested, individually. I'll help mentor somebody through the process. The thing I tell people is there's no single one way to get in the fire service. So if you look at my background, like I said, I was 33 years old when I got hired. I was in the academy with, a person that was 21 years old. So there is no single one way to be hired. We have a certain minimum requirements, which are 18 years old, have your EMT certificate, have a driver's license, and then put in an application. And then we will teach you. We'll put you through our own academy. We'll do all the fire training, all the EMS training that you need. So again, there's not just one way, but we are trying to establish a lot of different avenues for people. Again, with the fire science program in the high schools, there's a local EMT program, so people need their EMT certificate. There's a local program at Delta College now, for EMT certification. And you can always go to the Stockton government website, and you should be able to register on there for notice to be put to send to your email when we're hiring. There is a auxiliary program that we have, which is kind of our volunteer program. It's for anyone over 18 years of age. There again is a link on the fire department webpage, the city's webpage under fire department. If you go to volunteers, there's a link under there for our auxiliary program, and you can fill out an interest card, and then that gets sent to our auxiliary program, and they will contact you about follow-up for the auxiliary program. And that's for anyone who's over 18 years old. It's kind of a volunteer program to get your feet in the door. And then otherwise, we're usually doing hiring at least once a year right now. So we will put out notices on our social media page. So we have a Stockton Fire Department Facebook page. If you don't already belong to that, I would definitely belong to that. And we put out notices about our recruitment and stuff on those pages as well. So that's kind of a high level of how you can look for our jobs and also get informed and then get some experience. Like I said, you do have to have your EMT certificate. So we always recommend people do that. Delta College, like I said, that's a good starting place. And then there's some other EMT programs in other areas that you can look into as well.
Wonderful. Thank you for summarizing that. And so it sounds like there are jobs available and also volunteer opportunities. So if you are interested, get in touch with Stockton Fire Department. Looks like there's plenty going on there, plenty of opportunities available. Wonderful.
Yes, I will say that this is my pitch. There will always be jobs available just because of the dynamic of, I've been here 20 years. There's people that have been here 27, 28 years. That's that window of time where people start looking to retire. And there will be, over the next couple of years, there will be a segment of our employees that are retiring. And so we'll always need to be filling in the ranks, at the bottom and filling in those firefighter ranks. So we will be hiring. Some years it'll be more than others, but we should be hiring here for a good number of years.
Beautiful. Awesome. So now I'd like to ask about the budget. What is the Stockton Fire Department's budget and how are you funded?
Well, so most of our funding comes through the general fund. So most of that is from property tax and sales tax revenue. This year, we have our overall budget number is $90 million. Now, not all of that is attributed to the general fund. So without getting down into the weeds, we have an overall operating budget of roughly $90 million. We bring in what we would call cost recovery. So I have a dispatch center that brings in some cost recovery for other agencies that we dispatch for. I have a fire prevention bureau that brings in some cost recovery for inspections and different things that they do. So the total number of cost recovery is about 25 million. So our operating cost is about $65 million a year. And again, that's total. Some of that is out of the general fund. Probably 85% of our budget is general fund. And then other parts of our budget come from what's called enterprise funds, which is like our fire prevention bureau that has cost recovery built in for doing fire permits, fire inspections, and those kinds of things. And then we get some revenue from Measure W. So Measure W was passed back in the early 2000s. And I believe that one is a 1/4 cent sales tax. And that the Measure W money that comes in gets split 50% for police and 50% for fire. And then Measure A, which people are very familiar with, has been attributed mostly to law or to police. it's not, the way I understand it, it's not that it's not attributable to other city services. It just, not as much has been attributed to those city services. So we don't get as much through Measure A. And so those kinds of funds that are out there help do some of the funding besides just the general fund. The one thing that I want to point out, and I've been trying to figure a way as we talk to the community, is kind of, when I say our budget is 65 million after you take out the cost recovery that we get. I think it's important just for the community to remember the value that the fire department brings. And so what I'm trying to do is there's some data, some statistics out there on what we're trying to do is shift our message. And one of your questions was, how much does a fire cost and how much damage does a fire cause? And we used to always do that. We'd say, well, the fire caused $50,000 in damage to the home. What we're trying to do is look at, well, how much of that home was saved? So was the fire confined to the room, where it started? Well, then we saved, X hundreds of thousands of dollars. Was the fire confined to one building, but it could have burnt down 2 or 3 buildings? Okay, how much property was saved? So that's just something we're looking at to kind of help continue to educate the community on how much value the fire department brings to the community. If we weren't here and we didn't intervene in some of these incidents, like I know the Main Street fire downtown is a good example. If the fire department didn't exist, we would have lost that entire strip of buildings on Main Street. So when you start to add up the thousands and millions of dollars that we save, it kind of pales in comparison to the 65 million that were our annual cost to the city, which again, not all of it is general fund. But again, we're trying to, a perfect example is we had a fire at the port a couple months ago, and we had to take a stand right at one of the warehouses to keep the fire from impinging and burning down a warehouse. And so again, we're looking at what is the value of that business, what's the value of the building and all the contents, and how much value of property did we save. And so when you start adding those up on an annual basis, it's a lot. It just triggered a thought in my mind because you had asked me about the number of incidents we run and specifically the number of fires we run. And I think it's important for our community to know. So, for example, this year alone, I'm projected to respond or to be dispatched to about 150 working structure fires. Now that's a fire where some sort of building is involved. And if you factor that over 365 days, our department is going to a working building structure fire about every other day on average, if you're to average it over the year. And so again, that goes to how busy we are, but it also goes to how much impact we have on our property and our property values and the amount of value that we are able to save by intervening and performing aggressive firefighting tactics and getting into a building and putting that fire out. And the Main Street fire is a perfect example of, we tried to take a pretty aggressive stance on that fire early on and get inside the building. The fire was just fairly advanced that at some point we had to pull our crews out. It wasn't safe to keep people in there. But again, our goal was, okay, we're going to confine this fire to this building. We are not going to let it burn down or affect these other buildings. And that's the kind of the aggressive nature with which we take to try to save the community, value and dollars in that sense. So.
Very interesting. You touched on a lot of interesting things. I know you're talking more about the value kind of that comes from the fire department going out and saving properties. You said that in the past, you have quantified maybe how much a fire response call costs the city. Do you have a rough idea of what those numbers were or would be?
So I haven't quantified. I hate to have tried to open that. I don't have the answer in the sense that
Okay, yeah.
I can tell you that, an engine company, we have a fee schedule through the city, and the fee schedule is adopted every year, every couple of years by the city, and so we have a cost on there for like an inspection and what it could cost to send a crew out to do an inspection. What I can say is, what does it cost for me to send a crew on a call? It depends on what the call is. So if it's a medical call, most of our medical calls, we can get to the scene, provide treatment, and clear from the call in probably 30 minutes, right?
Yeah.
So it's the cost of those employees, the cost of the engine, fuel, wear and tear on the apparatus for those 30 minutes. But again, if we're showing up to a cardiac arrest, we're probably going to help transport with the ambulance folks. We're going to transport that person to the hospital. So my engine and my crew could be tied up for an hour on that call. If we go to a fire, again, depending on the size of the fire, if you look at the Main Street fire, I had crews out there for 2 or 3 days working on that fire. So again, the spectrum, it's so all over the board. One of the things I was referencing was in our reports, we used to categorize how much damage occurred, and we would say, $20,000 of damage to the house or $100,000 of damage. And all we're trying to do is kind of reshape the narrative to say, well, not just $20,000 of damage, but $650,000 of value saved because the house didn't burn.
Not damaged.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
Very cool. Okay, so really fluctuates depending on the type of call, what it's for. And as far as putting out fires, how long does it take? How long do those calls take? You're saying the one in downtown took a few days. How long does it typically take to put out a building, a structure fire?
So again, I can give you a general average, idea, which is, if we're going to one of our, structure fires that's maybe at a residence, again, we are an aggressive fire department. We attempt aggressive fire attack from the minute we get on scene. Our 3 priorities in this order are life, property, and the environment. So if we think there's life to be saved or we're unsure, we're gonna take an aggressive interior fire attack. We're hopeful that we can get that fire knocked down in 20 minutes.
Awesome.
If it's going to take more than 20 minutes, then we start calling more resources to the scene. Typically, even if we get the fire knocked down in 20 minutes, we could spend a couple hours on scene doing what's called, in the fire service, we use the terms called salvage and overhaul. So those 2 terms mean looking for continuing, although we've put the main fire out, we continue to open up different spaces in the building to make sure the fire didn't extend somewhere that we're not sure of. Yeah. And then overhaul is that, salvage is really that's the overhaul part. The salvage part is trying to save the property. So if there's people's belongings, perishable items, things that people are valuables, we're staying on scene. We're trying to cover those items, that we know there's smoke damage, water damage. So again, my crews can stay on scene for 2 to 3 hours on a building fire. And then if we get into a Main Street fire or we get on a fire at the port, my crews can be out there for days, substituting crews in and out to what we call fire watch. And that is just to make sure that the fire doesn't reignite, that we've found all the hidden voids and spaces where the fire could be hiding. And sometimes that takes days, as you know, with Main Street to make sure we've got all that.
Definitely. Okay. As far as the biggest costs in your budget, what would you say those would be?
Personnel. personnel is my biggest cost, without a doubt. We are a service industry. That's what I tell people. We don't manufacture widgets. I don't have a production line. I don't create, I provide a service to the community, and that service is provided by my employees, my firefighters. And so they are my budget. They're the primary cost of my budget. And then, of course, along with that is the equipment we need to do our job. So the fire engines, the fire trucks, the medical equipment that we need to do our job, and the continuous training that we have to go through. I think that gets lost, but we have an incredible amount of training hours that we put in to make sure that we're proficient. So when I tell you we're an aggressive interior firefighting department, with that comes a higher level of risk. And I'm not willing to put my people at risk unless I know they're well trained and well equipped. And so we put a lot of emphasis on having good equipment and good training for our people. And so that's part of the cost that goes in to providing the service. But ultimately, when somebody calls 911, whether it's for a medical emergency or a fire, we want to provide the best service to them that we can do. And that comes with the cost usually. And the biggest cost in my budget is just the personnel cost.
Definitely. And these people are putting their own lives at risk. So it's important that they're well paid, for being willing to do that and to go in and have this bravery to save people's lives and houses or, other pieces of property. So definitely well-deserved personnel costs.
Yeah.
So you touched on the fire in downtown Stockton, and downtown has had, many fires in our long history because it's one of the most historic parts of Stockton. So my question to you, what kind of goes through your mind when you're called to one of those historic building fires? What is that like for you? And how many of those have you been on in your career?
So let me start with the second question. Probably in 20 years, and my memory has gotten worse with the years. I've probably been on probably 6 to 8, maybe 10 downtown fires that were of significance in the sense of there was something significant happening at the building. There was some type of fire. Probably 8 to 10 in my career. Now, it's important to know I spent 10 years of my career at Station 6, which is at Victory Park, which I absolutely loved serving that area. So we got called when there was a fire downtown. We would be on the response to the downtown area. But the folks that actually have been assigned at Station 2, Station 9, which are the two main stations feeding downtown, they might have a few more that they would recall in their career. So again, it's just going to depend on where you've worked. Excuse me. But to kind of go through what goes through my mind, I think the best thing to say is that we never know what we're going to with these downtown fires, because the awesome part about downtown is it's unique. It has character. Everything's different, and nothing is status. There's no one cookie cutter building, right? And that's what I love about downtown Stockton is the character and the uniqueness of downtown. Well, from a firefighter perspective, that's also the hardest part of our job is the uniqueness and the character of these buildings, and not knowing necessarily what every building is like, knowing if there were modifications to the building inside, what if the building's occupied or unoccupied, has there been other modifications made? If it's been unoccupied, have people gotten inside the building and caused damage inside the building to floors or ceilings that is going to affect me as a firefighter when I try to go in there and and create or do fire suppression. Um, Apologize for that.
No worries.
There was another thought I was thinking about, again, as we're on our way to these calls, and we're also thinking about resources, um, making sure that we have enough resources coming. Um, just because, again, these buildings, if there is an active fire in some of these historic buildings, it can take a lot of manpower. And again, Main Street's a perfect example. We almost had, like, we call them divisions. We had 4 separate divisions set up on 4 sides of that building, and we had assigned a chief officer to each division. That takes people. I mean, that takes manpower, that takes personnel. And so having the other thing going through our mind is getting the right number of people there in time to be able to mitigate the emergency or whatever it might be.
So it's a huge challenge because of the uniqueness of the buildings, because of their age. And from the Downtown Stockton Alliance perspective, it's just such a huge loss when we lose one of those historic buildings, because it's not something that you can just bring back. Once it's gone, it's gone. So it can be very devastating when we hear about these fires, but your team does such a great job of trying to keep them contained, like you were saying, because a lot of the downtown properties, they're very tightly connected. So it could be a huge loss if a whole block, was gone just from a fire in one building. So you guys did great work on the commercial building. So thank you to your team for doing that and for all of the responses that you do in downtown. Yeah, it's really needed to save our history.
Yeah, of course. And I will say this, one thing I know what I was going to say, and I was forgetting where I was going with it, but working at Engine 6, I responded into downtown for some fires. The one thing that I will say is Station 2, which is downtown, has an engine, a ladder truck, and a battalion chief, and those 3 entities spend a lot of time training and walking through buildings downtown to be familiar with each one of these buildings. And you could go to any one of those crews, any one of those fire captains, any one of those battalion chiefs, from Station 2, and you could ask them about one of our, downtown buildings, and they can probably tell you, down to some pretty specific detail of what's in those buildings. And so we know that if we don't get a handle on it pretty early on, the impacts can be devastating. And so these Station 2 takes a lot of pride in knowing the downtown area and knowing the buildings, knowing what's in those buildings, knowing what the fire hazards are, knowing what the dangers are, knowing what they might encounter when they come to a call there. And they take a lot of pride in doing that and knowing knowing their district, being familiar with their district, which is a lot of that is the downtown area. And then Station 9 from Harding in California is another engine that spends a lot of time in the downtown area, and again does a lot of planning and familiarization with the buildings and what's happening. So I will tell our business owners, I will tell our community members that your fire department takes a ton of pride in the history and the tradition that we have downtown. And I mean, like you said, when one of these buildings is lost, it's almost like a part of us as Stockton firefighters is lost, because there is so much history and so much tradition, even from the fire department, that comes from downtown Stockton and the historic district. So we take a lot of pride in trying to be prepared and protecting those businesses. So
That's wonderful. Yeah, thank you. I would like to ask, what would you say is the most common cause of fires in our city? Can you share that?
Oh, so again, to kind of separate it into different buckets, we have we have a lot of outdoor fires. And then we have our structure fires, which are involving some sort of building. So, and again, those all incorporate about 40% of our calls. And then the other 60% is the medical calls. Our fires, most of them, I will say, are accidental in nature. Some could be borderline negligent. If somebody starts a fire and then they walk away, that's borderline negligent, but I don't believe they intentionally intended to cause destruction. So again, primarily the cause of most of our fires, I'm going to say, is accidental in nature. And again, if you're talking about structure fires, it could be everything from somebody, leaving candles unattended, maybe having combustibles too close to their water heater, something in their house. On our outdoor fires, sometimes it's the unhoused population that's starting an outdoor fire. Maybe it's for food cooking, for warmth. Sometimes it's people just being too casual with cigarettes or something that, we've had lawn equipment, people out there in hot days, low humidity with windy days, doing stuff with lawn equipment. So I couldn't say there's one, number one, this is our number one cause of fires. We have a great arson team. We have 2 people on our arson team that try to investigate as many fires as they can. And like I said, we're finding most of our fires, most causes are probably accidental in nature. And then behind the accidental part can vary from, is it an outdoor fire? Somebody threw out a cigarette, somebody wasn't safe with something they were doing, or are we talking about a fire at home in somebody's home or business? And again, those are usually mostly accidental, but for different reasons, people leaving candles unattended, or, other ways that fires get started in the house.
So most of the fires are accidental. What are some clues that a fire is caused by arson?
So that's why I have an arson team, because they take a lot of classes. They take a lot of classes and a lot of training to try to determine when a fire is intentional. And I would be doing them a disservice if I tried to sum it up. I know they look at fire patterns. So they'll look at, how did the fire start? They'll look for accelerants. Was there gasoline or some other product? They can sometimes tell if there was an accelerant used. They'll look at power and electricity. Was there power and electricity to the building? Sometimes those will give them clues on whether something was accidental or intentional. But we have an arson investigation team that handles that side of it, and they're experts in what they do. And so usually when we have fires that we consider suspicious, we will call them in and ask them to do an investigation.
Gotcha. So they're the experts for a reason.
Correct. Yes.
So I'd like to ask about a couple of tips for fire safety or fireproofing. What tips do you have for fireproofing a home or a place of business?
Yeah, so there's a couple different things we can do. You can look at fireproofing from the exterior of your home, and you can look at doing things from the inside as well. So, of course, the news gets out there with wildland fires. There's a term we call wildland urban interface, where you have communities that are built right in amongst the wildland environment. The city of Stockton isn't so much in that environment or in that place, but as you know, may or may not know, I shouldn't assume anything, but back in 2008, we had a very big fire in Stockton in the city, and it was called the Quail Lakes Fire. And that fire started in the city of Stockton. Because of wind conditions and heat and low humidity, it spread pretty rapidly and destroyed, 30 condominiums and 15 or 18 homes. So we always want people to be careful of the exterior of their home. What do they have next to their home? make sure they've got some defensible space around their home, make sure they're keeping their yards manicured, they're keeping weeds and grass cut, making sure they're not letting things get dried out, making sure they're keeping their rooftops clean. Don't let a lot of leaves and pine needles and different things build up on the rooftops or in the gutters. And then from the inside, really, the basics that we preach and a lot of people know about is make sure you have smoke detectors, because that may not prevent a fire, but that's going to save your life. Hands down, no questions asked. We want people to have smoke detectors. We want people to have carbon monoxide detectors. If you hear them beeping, that probably means the battery needs to be changed. Change the battery 2 times a year. We always remind people, when your clocks change in the spring and in the fall, we spring forward and fall back. Easy reminder, replace your batteries in your smoke detector. Smoke detectors do save lives. This month is Fire Prevention Month, and we have a big push going on with Food for Less and the American Heart Association, where on our Facebook page you can find we're at a couple different locations this week. But our big push is, smoke detectors and getting people aware of the importance of smoke detectors. Another thing people don't think a lot about is your dryer vents. So when you're drying clothes, that lint that's being sucked out, out of the dryer, back up the exhaust out of the tubes, that needs to be cleaned at least annually. We see a lot of dryer fires because people don't clean those dryer vents. So that's another great thing that people can do. Yeah. I've mentioned it already. Don't leave your candles unattended. So people never intend to start a fire with a candle, but they light the candle. They think they're going to leave the room. They don't come back for a couple hours. Candle melts. It's close to the curtains, close to the bed, whatever it is. So make sure you don't leave your candles unattended. We love for people to have fire extinguishers in their kitchen and in their garage. So just put one in there in the kitchen sink, put one in the garage. And related to the garage, we always try to tell people, your water heater will usually work on a gas ignition source. So it takes gas to ignite the pilot and lights heats the water up. We don't want you to have a lot of combustibles around your water heater, so keep that space clear around your water heaters. And then the last thing we talk about for fire safety tips is people practicing exit drills. So know how to get out of your house, and don't always practice going out the front door, because their front door might be blocked, or there might be fire between your bedroom and the front door. So just practice scenarios with your family on how to get out of your house, and then always have a meeting spot outside of your house on where you're going to meet as a family. The first thing the fire department wants to know when we show up is everyone out of the house. If you can tell us everybody is out of the house, like I said, we take our operation, we're still going to be very aggressive, but we take our operation, it's with a different level to knowing that everybody is out of the house and everybody's accounted for. Don't go back in the house once you get out of the house. We will go in, we will try to save pets, we will try to save, belongings, anything that's of value to you that we can save, but it's not worth your life. So we want people to get out of the house and everybody to have that meeting spot so that everyone within the house, that everybody has gotten out or that people weren't home or whatever. So those are some of the basic tips that we like to kind of preach to people to help us with fire safety.
Awesome. Yeah, those can be life-saving tips. So thank you, and hope everyone listening, takes them seriously, takes them into account. Maybe start making a fire drill plan or an escape plan for you, your family, or your business, your employees. Make sure that they know how to get out of the place of business. Thank you. I would say my next question is, so if someone sees a building on fire or they see a fire on the side of the road, they should call 911. to report it. Is there anything else that you would like the public to do to help kind of help you guys in your fire prevention efforts or fire control efforts?
Yeah, so if somebody sees a fire that's already started, immediately call 911. I think one of the best things that people can do too is get us a good location. So if it takes, I don't want, if you're on the freeway and you're traveling at 65 miles an hour and you see a small fire on the side of the road, please do not, try to slam on the brakes and stop on the freeway. But generally speaking, if you're on surface streets, you're in a neighborhood, if you can get us an address, if you can get us a specific location, that helps us. We can't do anything if we don't get to the right location. So number one is we need to get to the right location. If you're on the freeway, just remember, hey, I'm traveling northbound or I'm traveling southbound. Try to think about the closest exit to you. Was it south of that exit or was it north of that exit? If you can give those two things, the direction you were traveling and then the closest exit, so it was north or south of that exit, that's going to help us know which engines to send, especially on the freeway. And this goes with vehicle accidents as well. If you see a vehicle accident on the freeway, again, trying to give us the right direction that it's on the northbound side, it's on the southbound side, and it was north of or south of this particular on-ramp or off-ramp. That alone is huge for us because it can get us to the right location. One thing I would say we have found, if you're in a residential area or somebody, just a residential area and you happen to see a fire or you happen to see smoke, and don't hesitate to report it. We're not asking anybody to go inside of a building. What we do say is if you can, get to the door and knock on the door, ring the doorbell, alert people inside. Especially, we've had a few fires recently that have been on the outside of a house, maybe on the backyard or the side yard of a house, and people inside the house don't actually even know what's happening. So just banging on the door, ringing the doorbell, hey, there's a fire outside your house. We need you to get out. And you can tell them, hey, we've already reported it. I've already called 911. And just helping us get people out of the house, that's a huge, huge, big help. We never want anyone else to go inside. In fact, our dispatchers are trained. One of the things they'll tell people with a fire is make sure everybody gets out. We want everybody to get out. So, but if you're a passerby or you see something, you can always, like I said, knock on the door, knock on windows, alert people that there's something going on. So those are a couple big things that people can do to help us.
Wonderful. So really help you to orient where the fire is located. And if you can alert someone, if you see a fire on someone's property and you're able to try to alert them, do your best to do so. Love it. Yeah. Because we can all help. If we say something, we can help prevent huge damages from occurring.
Yeah, absolutely.
So for any property owners who have been impacted by fire damage, what resources are out there for them?
So unfortunately, the fire department, we don't have a ton of resources for the after the fact. What I will say is, as I mentioned, my arson investigators, we will, if we are unsure or there's suspicious circumstances, we will try to investigate to determine if we can find a cause and origin of the fire. So, and people are always, it's always available. Those reports, those arson reports would always be available to people to come and get from our fire administration office. That's one thing that we provide. The immediate thing that we'll do is, which I already mentioned, is kind of the salvage aspect, is we will try to, cover or take out as many belongings as we can to help people in that immediate need. And then if people need shelter, we will also make it a priority to contact Red Cross. And Red Cross is very good about coming out and helping provide shelter, temporary shelter for people that need it for a couple days until they can get insurance companies involved and get some kind of plan on where they're going to stay if they can't stay, at their property. And then there's the fire department does have some gift cards that we're able to give out immediately on scene to those affected by the fire to at least help them with some groceries or some clothes, stuff like that, those immediate needs. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing some of the resources that are available and some of the, at least who to get in touch with in case people need a little bit more help, kind of finding how they can get support now that this has happened to them and they're in this situation. We're running down we're coming, close to the end of our time. So I want to try to consolidate some of my questions. If any of our listeners are needing a fire inspection, what's the best line that they should call, or who should they get in touch with to learn more about what they need to do to make sure their building can pass that fire inspection?
Sure. So our fire prevention office handles all of our inspections. They'll handle construction permits that have a fire component to it. So if you're doing a tenant remodel, you're doing a new building build, you'll be going through the building department. Our fire prevention is part of that process. Or if you're a landlord and you own a rental property or something, we'll do fire inspections. And the best number for you to call would be our fire prevention office, which is 209-937-8271. And that will take you directly to our fire prevention office.
Thank you. 937-8271. Perfect. Thank you very much. Just in case anyone listening is needing a fire inspection, that's who to get in touch with. And I would like to ask, you've had a long career. You've been in a lot of, different positions. Are there any stories that you can share that have had a big impact on you, or which you believe had a big impact on someone else's life?
So I will say this. One area that I told you I spent about 10 years at Station 6, and part of the reason I was there, or while I was there, I was a member of our water rescue team. And so we had a surface rescue team, and at the time we also had a dive rescue team. And I think, over 10 years there were some stories. Some of them weren't positive outcomes. But I think the message was always very important to me, especially in Stockton with the Delta, the waterways, is encouraging people to be safe around the water, and everybody wearing a life jacket. If you're on a boat, wearing a life jacket, and everyone says, well, I can swim, I know how to swim. Right. But if there's an accident on that boat, you may not have the ability to swim. You may be thrown off the boat. You may be unconscious. A whole lot of reasons. So I think just kind of getting that message out there that, we do a lot with fire safety. We do a lot with public education about fire safety. But again, we have so much water, in people's homes and the swimming pools, and just being, some of those calls I went on, and they were traumatic calls. They were sad calls. And it was like, some of these things I felt like could be prevented. And as a firefighter, if you can help prevent something in the future, I'd much rather do that than respond to a call. And just encouraging people, when you're in the water, around the water, using life jackets, knowing who's around the water, keeping your eyes on young kids, and just getting that message out there that those water emergencies can happen, and they can happen very quickly. And we just encourage people to be safe and continue to be safe. And what was the other? Did you have a second part to the question?
Oh, yes. So I was asking if there are any stories that had a big impact on you, or if there were any examples that you could share of maybe times when you felt like you had a big impact on someone else's life.
Wow.
That you can talk about.
Yeah. No, I mean, we've been, so here's one thing I will say we've been doing. This is very general, but our EMS program, our EMS division has been trying to recognize the efforts of our people when we have a really successful outcome. Because, like I just said, I think sometimes what sticks with us as firefighters is some of the negative and some of the bad stories and the bad situations and maybe how we weren't able to help. And when you're a firefighter and you're not able to help, like that weighs pretty heavy on you. So what we've tried to do is really celebrate successful outcomes now and make an effort that our people are celebrated. And so with our EMS division, we've made a real conscious effort to kind of recognize when those events happen, if it's a childbirth, if it's a cardiac arrest where somebody's, gets the heartbeat back and somebody leaves the hospital. So we've been trying to successfully promote those ideas, and we do it all the way from our dispatchers. So our people who are on the phone, they're providing, if somebody's in cardiac arrest, they're providing CPR instructions. I mean, they have a true role in that emergency. And then our crew's responding, and our crew's providing CPR and cardiac medications, and then the hospital people and AMR transporting the people. And so we're really trying to close the loop and celebrate people when we have those positive outcomes. And as a fire chief, that's one of the most rewarding things to me, is seeing when we have those positive impacts on the community and seeing and recognize our employees who are doing it day in and day out, because I think it can be taken for granted, and we just need to celebrate those positive outcomes. So
that's beautiful. It's very similar to kind of the reframing of fire and the cost versus the value. What did we save? And then looking at the stories of who did we save, what worked, and celebrating those successes, because you guys have such important work. It's it's life or death work. You guys are there in high stress situations, and that's wonderful to celebrate every single positive outcome. So I love that. I love that you're talking about it.
Absolutely. It's absolutely a must. And we kind of started a pilot program here in Stockton doing that. And now the county EMS agency is kind of adopting the program and wants to recognize throughout the county when these really positive outcomes come about, celebrating them, with other EMS personnel as well. So really proud of it. And it's one of those things that we have to do. So
very exciting. So I know we're at 11:30. I've got maybe one or two more questions. Do you have time to keep going maybe for 5 more minutes or so?
Yeah, a couple more minutes.
Awesome, thank you. So my last little round of questions is just about downtown Stockton. So you already talked a little bit about you love downtown Stockton because it's unique. I just want to ask, what else do you enjoy about downtown Stockton? And maybe do you have a favorite building that you like to talk about?
Well, like I said, our Station 2, I mean, those folks could tell you about every building and what's inside of them. I had the privilege of working for a couple years in our fire prevention division. And while I was in that division, I did some of our high-rise inspections. So the high-rise is anything under state statute. It's anything over 70 feet. So like the Bank of Stockton, Court Towers. So I was kind of partial to the Bank of Stockton. And I know there wasn't much in there when I was inspecting it, but just the architecture and what I was saying earlier about the uniqueness and the character of our downtown, and just I almost like tried to visualize myself back in the 20s and 30s and 40s and being in that building and what it would have been like. And I don't know, I just found it fascinating. I could almost like think of how much history, these buildings that were built back in the early 1900s. So that's one that sticks in my mind. And then like I said, my wife and I, we love coming downtown. We love the waterfront. I think it's such an awesome thing that we have the waterfront, and we love, in my role as the fire chief, I don't, want to show favorites or play favorites. We love all of our restaurants downtown. We love coming downtown and being part of the downtown community. And so, like I said, sticking to the building, I would have to say was probably the Bank of Stockton. I just found the most interesting, just kind of going through that building and seeing, the Yosemite Club that was up there on the top floors for a few years, and just the history and everything with that building. It was pretty fascinating to me, and I'm not usually like a history buff, but I found that to be kind of one of those interesting things. So
it's definitely one of our iconic historic buildings, and you're right, it just seems so interesting having the Yosemite Club at the top. You just wonder who all went there, what were they talking about, what were they doing in there, It's very cool. We hope that it will be rehabilitated in the future, into something neat, but wouldn't it be cool to see the Yosemite Club back? Maybe that'd be awesome.
Yeah, no, I would absolutely. It's not my wheelhouse. It's not my expertise, but I'm so thankful for those of you who are working, to continue to promote the downtown. I just think there's so much character there, and like the Fox Theater and the Civic Auditorium, and hearing about boxing matches that they had in the Civic Auditorium, and it's like just incredible, the history. And so I'm super thankful there's those of you that are continuing to promote the downtown and look after ways that we can preserve that history. So
thank you, and thank you for your role in protecting it as well. We need that. We definitely need that. So I think I'd like to just ask, before we see if there's any audience questions, I want to ask, is there anything that you would like to share that we haven't already talked about with viewers? Are there any events coming up from the fire department? Is there any information that you want to make sure gets out there before we move into audience questions?
We have covered so much. If there's anything I mentioned, I guess, that people have follow-up, if somebody has a question, I'm happy to answer it. But if people that watch this in playback mode or whatever, and they have a question, happy to answer anything on email or phone. Like I said, this month is Fire Prevention Month. We have some activities going on. You can visit our Facebook page. We have an art contest going on with our schools, with the Stockton Fire and Lodi Fire Departments. We're going to do an award for an art project. So we have that going on this month. We're doing I think we've been doing it every month. We've been doing a read along in our city libraries. So I know we've done at least 2 libraries, and on next Thursday, October 16th, we're doing a read along. One of our engines will come to the Trochee Library and do do a ride along there. So those are probably the biggest things. We have probably highlights right now.
Awesome. Some public events. All right. Well, definitely you've shared so much information with us today. You've talked about the history of the fire department. You've talked about the budget. You've talked about 911 calls and fire safety tips, fire prevention, it's just wonderful information, so interesting. You've talked about, which stations serve downtown Stockton, and kind of your strategies going into these fire calls. So thank you for answering all of my questions.
Absolutely.
And at this time, I just see that there are, let's see, 2 questions only from the public. So are we ready?
Yes.
Okay. This question is from Mike Huber. He says, I see the fire department training in downtown. Thank you for all they do to keep downtown safe. How do you see technology advancing in how fires are being fought in the future? You kind of touched on it a little earlier.
Yeah, great question. Great question. I was going through my notes, and there is going to be an element or a point at which what we do, we're still going to always have to do. And water is always going to have to go on fire to be able to put it out. And as much technology advancement as we do to make our job safer, that still is going to be the fundamental job that a firefighter has to do. Technology can be used to help us. I mentioned the technology in how we get to our calls. So I'm really excited about potential traffic technology that can help us in our response times. We have some, for lack of a better word, kind of infrared cameras right now that we can actually use inside of a building that can help us locate where fire is in the building. So that's an advancement that we're using. Another advancement is drones. Drones are coming around, and we're looking at potentially purchasing some drones. And at the Main Street fire would be a perfect example where you have a pretty big footprint of a building, and you can put the drone up, and then your incident commander can be in one spot, but they can see, all 4 sides of what's happening at that fire. So I think that's going to be a huge thing that can help us, again, just with situational awareness and what's happening, at a particular incident. There's going to be some predictive analytics stuff coming out, which, if we have an engine or a truck that's on a call, do we need to cover their area while they're on a call, using predictive analytics to kind of predict where the next call might come in. And so that's something we're going to look at with our dispatch center and kind of advancing some of that technology as well. But again, at the end of the day, the water is going to have to go on the fire, and we're going to continue to develop, and we're going to get new tools and new equipment that's going to help, whether it's open up the buildings, get inside the buildings, being able to see inside of the buildings. But at the end of the day, firefighting fundamentally will always have that component of we've got to get in and get water on the fire. So
there's a physical component.
Yes.
Good. Thank you. And thank you, Mike, for your question. All right. And the only other question we have is from Andy Nguyen. He says, thank you for sharing your knowledge about our fire department. Is there another safety precaution you would recommend to the public to prevent accidental fires? So you talked about a lot. Are there any additional ones you want to share?
I would just say this. When temperatures are high, when you hear that humidity is low, and you happen to go outside that day and you see the wind is blowing more than normal, those are really the days. Those are the watch out days. Like, just be extra careful. Like, whatever you're doing, thinking about, could I cause a spark? Could something happen that I'm not intending? Those are the things, as the fire chief, that keeps me up at night. When we get those high heat days, low humidity with some wind, and people just being a little bit careless. Is there anything else specific? I think if you could implement a ton of those things we talked about in the home, so, watch your candles, make sure your water heaters don't have things, surrounding them. Make sure you clean your dryer vents. Some of those basics, those can go a long, long way. So
beautiful. So in the summertime, just be extra mindful, extra mindful of what you're doing.
Yeah.
Be sure you're not the cause. Awesome. Well, I just want to say thank you so much, Chief Carr, for your time and for your service to our community. And thank you to your team for their time and service to our community. You guys make a huge difference, and truly a heartfelt thank you to you for everything that you do. And thank you for your time today. And I also want to say thank you to the audience for tuning in. Do you have any closing thoughts before we head out?
Do you want me to give any contact information, or I'm
Yes,
happy
please.
to do it?
Yes.
Yeah. So my email, you can reach me by email. It's Bryan with a Y, so it's BRYAN .Carr CARR at StocktonPA.gov.
Perfect.
And you can reach me anytime, 209-471-2646.
Thank you.
And as far as final thoughts, I think I've sprinkled in some of my gratitude and thanks, to you, and specifically to the Downtown Stockton Alliance, and to our business owners and our downtown advocates. I think it's a jewel of Stockton. I think when we talk about what Stockton has to offer, I think it's one of the essential parts of what we have to offer as a community, and thankful for our downtown, and whatever we can do to continue to help support you guys and support downtown, please let us know. And we're just thankful to be here and love serving the community and helping in as much as we can.
Well, thank you very much. And I know that we've gone over today, so I will let you get back to your extremely busy schedule.
No problem.
But we appreciate you. And with that, thank you again. And I'll just say, have a great day downtown. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Courtney. Appreciate it.